So I set up Social Entrepreneurs Ireland almost 10 years ago now, in 2004. And when I started working on this idea around the organisation, the thing was that no one knew what social entrepreneurship was. In fact, in Ireland, the term just hadn't been used at all, except for Darren, obviously, when he was 4 and told his parents he was going to be a social entrepreneur. And I think that one of the things we've seen now over the last couple of years is that we use terms quite a lot. We use social entrepreneurship, we use social enterprise. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, this can kind of become a bit of a confusing space, and kind of what do we mean by all of these things? And now we're starting to talk about other ideas like impact investing and community interest companies, and I'll talk a bit about those in a little while. I suppose the first thing I wanted to do today is we've heard from 2 really interesting examples. We've heard from Dahi, who set up a charity. He wasn't really sure now if that's what he should have done, but that's what he did. We heard from Isolt, who set up a social enterprise. And we've also got this other type of approach, which is setting up a for-profit business. It was almost when Darren started off, he asked for hands up who wanted to be a commercial entrepreneur, and a whole load of hands went up. And then he asked who wanted to be a social entrepreneur, and hands went up, not as many, but hands went up. It's really about someone who wanted to put up both hands at the same time, I guess is what I'm going to talk a bit about. But before we do that, just to give you a kind of an idea and where I see the world and how I kind of break things up and categorise things. This is an organisation, Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, is involved in the European Venture Philanthropy Association. And this is kind of how they've broken down the spectrum of different types of organisations. And I think in a way it can be somewhat useful. Only useful because sometimes you need solid ground to stand on. Sometimes you need to know where do you fit if you're setting up your own organisation. And I absolutely agree that social entrepreneurship isn't the answer. The only answer. It's one of the answers. Being someone who sits outside, and doesn't call themselves a social entrepreneur, who goes to prison because he wants to see an Irish language TV. All of these are really important to driving social change. So social entrepreneurship is one, and social enterprise is one way of doing that. Lots of different ways. But if you're going to do something, I think it's important that you know what it is that you want to be and how you want to operate as a company. And I think actually from both Isolt and Dahi's talks, we see that some of those questions sort of become really important as you start to develop and build your organisation. So really in this graph, you can think of traditional charities down here, and some charities just survive by grants and donations. And despite what people say nowadays, you know what? That's okay. That is okay. It's perfectly acceptable. And in fact, sometimes it's the best way to do it. Because sometimes what you want to do, when you want to change the world, is you want to tackle a problem where it's not easy to see who's going to pay you to do that. So there are some problems in the world where it's very, very difficult to imagine how you're going to generate revenue. And sometimes you just have to do that. You just have to go out there and help. Okay? Traditional charities. This box, the second box here, this I've put in here, charities which have, like Bernardo's or ISPCC, which have charity shops. So they get a bit of money from selling stuff, but really the core of the organisations is based on grants and donations. Anyone who tells me that that is not a sustainable business model, I absolutely and fundamentally disagree with. You look at an organisation like Bernardo's or like Concern. Concern was founded, I can't remember, 45, 50 years ago. I would ask how many commercial companies last 45 or 50 years. Not a high percentage. So we can build sustainability in there, and that's one model. The second way we can look at changing the world is this second big category here, which is social enterprise. And social enterprise, is where you're looking to build your organisation and charge for services. Isolt gave a great example. She's done a pilot with Tesco. Now what she'd like to do is get Tesco to pay her to take away the food. Now, in a way, that's great. And it makes sense for Tesco. Not only are they doing good in the world, and that's a good thing, but they're also going to have to pay for the disposal of their food anyway. So they're already incurring a cost. So if you can get them to give you that money and do something good with it, rather than pay someone else to just destroy the food, sure, everyone wins. And so you've got different kind of graduations there. Some, where you don't fully cover your costs by your traded activity, sometimes where you break even, and sometimes where you even make a profit. But all of that profit goes back into the social mission. That's how I would see a social enterprise. And then on the far right, you've got traditional business. People are out there just, their primary motivation and primary focus is making money. Making money for shareholders, for owners, for the business itself, and to distribute out to whoever owns that business. And there's this very interesting bit in the middle, which is a bit kind of vague because it's hard to put your finger on it. But it's for-profit businesses where shareholders or owners can get some money out of the business if it is successful, but that is socially driven. And that's the interesting space I think we're starting to explore now in Ireland. And we're a bit behind the curve here because in other countries, for example in the UK and the US, they've already started to develop some of the infrastructure needed to allow these type of businesses to grow and thrive. But we do see some examples in Ireland, and I just want to give you two examples because there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of opportunity because some people genuinely want to make a difference. Now, some people are very motivated by the social mission and will set up charities or social enterprises. I think we've got two really fantastic examples here. By the way, I think both of them are social entrepreneurs. Sorry, Dahi, I'm going to call you one anyway, okay? I think that social entrepreneurs, isn't some sort of badge that you put on yourself and to feel good. But I do think it describes a particular type of approach and a particular attitude, which is about more than yourself. It's about looking beyond, to your community, which both Isolde and Dahi talk very powerfully about, and being active and entrepreneurial in just trying to make a difference. So I think that there's lots of different ways you can do that, but I think this idea of people who want to make a difference but also would like to make some money is a really interesting idea, and something that we're going to see more activity over the next couple of years in Ireland. So what would a business like that look like? Well, I'm going to give you two examples. Both of these examples, Social Entrepreneurs Ireland has invested in and supported. And the first is NeuroHero. This is Aviva Cohen, the founder and CEO of NeuroHero. Aviva's got a very interesting story. She was married, she's a black belt in karate, as is her husband, Steve. And one day they were out in the back garden with their kids, a 6-year-old and a 6-month-old kid, and Steve collapsed in the back garden because he had a stroke. And in his recovery from the stroke, he lost a lot of functionality. His speech was severely impaired. In fact, he had no words left after the stroke. And his mobility was severely impaired. His cognitive understanding was impaired. So Aviva wanted to help her husband. And what she found was that there were programs where they could go out and get support for Steve. They were very expensive. So she could do that for a certain amount of time and then couldn't anymore because she couldn't afford them. But the second problem, which was really interesting, was that people came to visit Steve, because he's quite a popular guy. And they'd come from all over Ireland, but they'd also come from abroad. Aviva told me a story where a friend of theirs came, I think it was from the Netherlands, and he flew in to Belfast Airport, got a car, drove down to their house. The problem with Steve was that people didn't know how to interact or communicate with him because he had suffered a stroke. So they weren't sure how to have that conversation. That meant they felt uncomfortable, but so did Steve. So this person came down from the airport, having flown in, walked into the house. Steve had a couple of words at this point in his life. And as they came in and said, "Hi, Steve." And Steve stood up, grabbed their hand, shook it, and went, "Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye," and walked them out the front door and shut the door behind them. Because he felt too uncomfortable being around people who didn't know how to interact or communicate with him. That made him feel bad. So Aviva wanted to solve this problem. How did she solve it? She decided to develop a set of apps for your tablet or your phone, 3-minute tutorials. So when people come in, they do two things. They both are training for people who've suffered stroke or acquired brain injury to help them get back some of their cognitive functions and language ability. But they also are little short primers on how to interact with people in that situation. So if someone comes and visits, you can bring them off to the kitchen Say, come here, help me make a cup of tea before we go in and see Steve. Show them this, 3 minutes, and then they're able to interact and communicate in an appropriate way. Aviva, once you're setting that up, said, this is something that I think people will pay for. Because people download apps and buy apps. So she set it up as a for-profit business. And this goes back to this whole idea of memo and arts. Your memorandum and articles of association, they are the founding documents of your company. And you make some big decisions when you're deciding what your memo and arts are going to be, whether you're going to be for-profit or not-for-profit. So she set it up as for-profit. Well, the reason she set it up as for-profit is she wants to get investment. So she wants this to go around the world, and she thought the best way she could do that is by having investors, commercial investors, who are prepared to put money in and get some equity, get some shares in her company. That allows her to expand. But the critical thing for Aviva is that the mission is absolutely central. Absolutely central. So she isn't going to compromise on the quality of care or on the focus on people like Steve in order to get investment. She isn't going to sell her soul in that sense. But she is going to have a for-profit and a business model. Very interesting example. The second example is Emma Murphy. The organisation is called the Turning Institute. The online platform is called Feeling Focused. Emma is a trained therapist and had been doing a lot of work with people with eating disorders and anxiety. And again, a very interesting problem. Here's the thing about eating disorders. People want to feel in control. It's a very big part of an eating disorder that you're controlling your own body in that sense. That control means that people are reluctant to seek help, because seeking help is an admission that you aren't in control anymore. So often what happens with eating disorders is people present to professionals, to therapists, very late in the day, when the condition has progressed very significantly. What you'd love to do is get people presenting much earlier on, so you could address the issue much earlier. But they won't do that because of that issue of control. So what did Emma do? She put these online therapy sessions on her site. So now people with eating disorders or with anxiety can log on, can access those, and they don't feel they're losing as much control because it's within their control whether they want to go onto the net, whether they want to click on that. No one else needs to know that they're looking at these sessions. Again, mission being central, absolutely central. But Emma wants to see this grow and expand, and the way she's decided to grow and expand that is by seeking commercial investment. Both Aviva and Emma got on the Launchpad programme in the NDRC, National Digital Research Centre. They invested and took 10% equity in the companies, in both of them. Emma then went on to a VC funding round and secured 300,000 euros of venture capital investment in order to grow the business. So these models are there, powerful models, and we'd like to see those starting to be encouraged, as well as the more traditional charity and social enterprise. We don't think these models should replace charity and social enterprise, but we think that they add another element to the broader picture of how we drive change in this country. But there are some challenges, particularly around these models. When you do or set up a business in this type of situation, you're in a bit of a no man's land. Because one of the challenges you face is if you are a social enterprise, and if you say, I'm going to reinvest all my profits back into the organisation, into the social mission, that's pretty clear. If you are a social enterprise, most social enterprises set up as companies limited by guarantee, with no share capital. What does that mean? It means there's no shareholders. If there's no shareholders, there's no one to take profits, if you generate profits out of the business. So all profits have to go back into the business. Those are pretty clearly defined criteria. So if I'm a funder or an investor, I can look at a social enterprise or a charity and say, I'm pretty clear, you're in the doing good space, as Darren was talking about. If I've got shares, and I've got equity, and I've got shareholders, and an investor looks at me and thinks I might make money, maybe not now, but maybe 2-3 years down the line, then often they think of you as being, you're just in it for the money. And so if you're this new model, this socially driven business, investors on both sides don't really know how to deal with you. The commercial investors get a bit worried because they're saying, hang on, I'm here to make money, so if I'm going to invest in you and you're going to be banging on about saving the world, I'm worried that your focus isn't going to be on maximising profits, and that isn't good for me. Whereas the social investors, or the donors, the people who give grants, look at you and say, well, hang on, if I give you some money, you're going to make profits and take it back for yourself. That isn't why I'm in it. And so you're kind of stuck a bit in the middle, and I think that's the real challenge we have as a country at the moment. Luckily, there are examples of what way we can start to solve or tackle some of these challenges if we look outside Ireland. We do have things like benefit corporations and community interest companies. Two interesting examples. Benefit corporations were developed in the United States. Essentially in the United States, as a corporation, you had a fiduciary responsibility to maximize long-term value for the company, i.e. Financial value. So basically, as a company, if you had shareholders and you were acting in a way that wasn't in the interest of maximizing profit, so you weren't driving towards maximizing profit, but doing something good in the world as well as making some profits, you had the potential to be sued. Because that wasn't your job as a company. Your job is to maximize long-term value. A benefit corporation is a new legal structure in the US that says it's okay to spend some of our profits and some of our money and some of our effort actually doing good in the world and make some profits on as well. And we can have both of those objectives as part of our company's mission. Community interest company in the UK is a very interesting idea. It's a company, a for-profit company, but if you make profits, you are limited as a company to giving no more than 35% of your profits to your shareholders. You can give less if you haven't made a lot of profit, or if you made no profit, but if you've made profits, a maximum of 35% can be given back to your shareholders in the form of dividends. All of the rest, the other 65% of any profits you make, have to be reinvested back into the social mission. So you've got structures that allow people to invest, and they know where they stand. They aren't in this no man's land anymore. Impact investing is people who want to give money where they're going to make a return on the investment, so they're going to make some money back, but also they're going to make some a return in terms of social impact. So all of these mechanisms are starting to develop. I think what we're going to see in Ireland is that this is going to continue to grow and develop, and that the Avivas and Emma Murphys of this world, the feeling focused and neuro heroes, are not going to be the exceptions they are now, but are going to be more part of the mainstream and the norm. And I think that's a very exciting thing to be happening, because we need all of those different forms to be happening. As I say, at the start of this talk, Darren asked for hands, and there were some hands up for commercial, some hands up for social. I'm hoping that at some part of this audience, there's one or two people, as I say, who want to put both hands up, who want to be the next Emma Murphy or the next Aviva Cohen. If so, I say go for it. I think that you're going to be breaking new ground. I think these are really interesting models. And I think that you guys, when you do set up these for-profit but socially driven businesses, are going to be really the pioneers of a new form of social change, of a new form of company structure in Ireland. And I think that's a really exciting place to be. Look forward to seeing some of them emerge from the people in this audience and others in the years to come. Thanks very much.